We're middle of Siman Chaf Vav in Iggeres HaKodesh, and over the last two classes, what we did is we read a passage from the Zohar, from the Rai Mehemna, which greatly extols the study of Kabbalah. Talks about how Kabbalah is the Eitz Chaim and Isser v'Heter, Tumah v'Tara. All of this is Eitz Hadas Tevara. It says the Mashiach comes, we're going to be learning Kabbalah, and when Mashiach comes, it says that then the Talmidei Chachamim are no longer going to be dependent for their livelihood and sustenance upon the Amei Haaretz, because at that time, the Amei Haaretz, they get their energy from Eitz Hadas Tevara. When Mashiach comes, then it'll be then everything will be under the influence of Eitz Chaim, and at that time we'll only be studying Kabbalah, and the Talmidei Chachamim will not receive any, will not be receiving from the Amei Haaretz, from the ignorant people, to the contrary.
But Rabbi, if when Mashiach comes, we're going to be learning Kabbalah, shouldn't we start preparing ourselves now and start learning now? Because Mashiach can come at any moment.
We are.
Time is full of Kabbalah.
That's what we're doing.
Okay.
Okay. So
Okay. Excellent.
the Alter Rebbe asks many questions on this passage of Zohar. Really takes it apart to little pieces, and it boils down to three general categories. In each category, the Alter Rebbe asks many questions. But the first category is the Alter Rebbe says, how can you say that the whole Torah is Eitz Hadas Tevara, and the only thing part of Torah that's Eitz Chaim is Kabbalah? That's absurd. Number one. Number two, he says, what does he mean that when Mashiach comes, we're going to be learning only Kabbalah? How are we going to know all the halachas if we're only learning Kabbalah? And number three, what does it mean that when Mashiach comes, then the Talmidei Chacham are no longer going to be dependent on the Amei Haaretz for their sustenance? After all, throughout the times of Bayesheni, which was when that was the Tkufa around which the Bayesheni, and a little after the Bayesheni, when the Zohar was written, at that time the Talmidei Chacham were self-subsistent. They did not rely on the Amei Haaretz for what they needed. The Talmidei Chacham had their own fields, their own vineyards, etc. Those are the questions. That's what we're holding. And now let's do inside page 286. However, be'emes, truth. Because if you want to look closely at what the Rai Mehemna says, if you want to be medactic in the words, because if you recall on page 284, the Rebbe writes over there, V'hinei hamuvan mahashkafa rishona l'chayra meloshin zeh hamaymer l'chseri mada. The Rebbe says that when you give, at first glance, it would seem that the meaning of this passage of the Zohar is to those who lack real knowledge in Kabbalah. So, in other words, the Alter Rebbe is really setting us up. Alter Rebbe, all the questions that the Alter Rebbe asked is based on an erroneous understanding of what the Zohar means. Now, Alter Rebbe says, if you look closer at the Zohar, then you'll get an accurate understanding of what the Zohar says. Zohar says, "V'ilana de toivera," that the Eitz Hadas toivera, the ihu Isser v'Heter chulu, which is Isser and Heter. V'lo yamar, what the Zohar does not say is Toiras Isser v'Heter. It doesn't say that the Torah of Isser v'Heter is Eitz Hadas. Or Hilchas Isser v'Heter. It doesn't say that the halachas of Isser v'Heter are from the Eitz Hadas. Ella, rather, the intent is to say, the guf davar ha'asur v'davar ha'muter, the actual thing which is either asur or is muter, hu me'ilana de tevara, is from the Eitz Hadas tevara, shehu klipas nega, which is klipas nega, commission as bar beis chaim, as explained in Eitz Chaim. So we're making a very, very important distinction. We're not saying over here that the parts of Torah that deal with the topics of Isser v'Heter, of that which is permitted and that which is forbidden, or the parts of Torah which deal with all these things that he mentioned earlier. We're not saying that these are Eitz Hadas. We're saying these are the parts of Torah that discuss those things that come from the Eitz Hadas. Meaning, when you're learning Hilchas Isser v'Heter, you're learning about physical objects, and all these physical objects, which are either Asur or Mutter, all of them, where do they receive their energy from? And their sustenance, they receive it from the Eitz Hadas. And now you're going to ask, okay, I understand if something is Asur, so I get it. Then it's Eitz Hadas. But why, if something is Mutter, why is it Eitz Hadas? The Rebbe explains. V'zehu lashon Asur. What does the word Asur mean? This is something that we learned earlier on in Talia. The Rebbe talks about it in Perik. Which Perik? Perik Zayin, in Perik Zayin and Perik Ches, Al-Kuti Amar. What does the word asr mean? We talk about something being asr and mutter, which means permitted or forbidden. But what does the word asr and mutter, what do they literally mean? Asr literally means tied down, chained, in captivity. Mutter means, right, mutter means something which is untied. Why would something which is forbidden be called tied down or chained in captivity? And something which is permitted, why is it called mutter? What's the meaning of these words? Sorry?
If it's tied down, it means that you're not allowed to do it.
What's tied down?
Tied down to what?
It's tied down from use. You know, you're not allowed to use it.
So it's a metaphor, you're saying?
You mean it's restricted?
Good, but the Alter Rebbe is going to explain it's much more than a metaphor. It's actually a very accurate description of what it is.
We use that to describe a neder also.
So let's look inside.
We use that to describe a neder.
Well, but that makes sense. You're bound. You're bound to your oath. Your oath.
Your neder is to untie it to.
You're untying yourself because you're bound to an oath, and that makes sense. And then you're free from that oath.
Right.
It's a little different than when.
But you can't do it yourself.
To say that a piece of meat is bound to what? It's a little. I'm not saying it's outrageous or ridiculous, and the fact is that for thousands of years the words have been used. But Alter Rebbe is going to say there's actually a very deep meaning over here, which is, what does the word asr mean? Shaklipa sheira alav, that the klipa resides on it, and therefore ve'eni yachal lalos lamayla. Something which is asr is tied down; it cannot be elevated. Cannot be elevated. Kedavar hamuter. Unlike something which is mutter, which is untied. Why is it called untied and unbound and not in captivity? Because it could be elevated. Dehainu, what does it mean when you say something is mutter? She'enei kosher v'asr beklipa. It's not tied down, and in captivity within the klipa. V'yuchal lalis, and it could be elevated. Aidei ha'adam ha'ichle bekavana laHashem, by a person eating it with kavana to Hashem. Now, how all this is suddenly relevant over here, we'll get there in a second. We're going to discuss a little of this idea of elevating. And how it is, and then we're going to tie it back and understand the connection to our conversation over here.
Rabbi, ha'ochlo bekavana or making bracha bekavana?
The what?
Or both of them? Making bracha or kavana?
We'll find out. And this can be elevated to the person who eats it with a kavana for Hashem, meaning that the person's eating it as part of his avodas Hashem, eating it because they want to use the energy of this food in order to be able to serve Hashem afterwards. Shebekoyach. V'gam, and also b'stam kol adam, any person who serves Hashem, shebekoyach achilahi, with the energy provided by that food, leimedu mispal la Hashem, learns and davens, v'nimtza. So it turns out shenasa esiyas ha'torah v'hatfilah. Ha'elo Hashem, that the letters of Torah or the letters of davening, which now are elevated and go up to Hashem, is mekoyach hanivrar ma'amaychalahu, is from the food, the energy which is extracted from that food. Alter Rebbe is saying, and this is the only place in Tanya actually Alter Rebbe spells out these two different ways of elevating food. First way to elevate food is when you have kavanah l'shem shamayim, that when you're eating the food, your intention is to serve Hashem with it. And then if you do that, the food is elevated. It doesn't make a difference what you do afterwards. Even if you happen to go to sleep afterwards. If you had kavanah l'shem shamayim when you ate the food is immediately elevated.
But when you make a bracha, that's
The bracha is not mentioned over.
That was my question.
isn't that the way you elevate it, by making a bracha?
So apparently the answer is no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean exactly elevating food? What it has more kedusha? I mean, how it's
No, I'll explain. I understand. Because food, when we ingest food, we're not supposed to gorge, during the week, we're not supposed to gorge ourselves with food.
What's that?
We're supposed to use the
Listen what I'm
food
saying.
to ingest, to serve Hashem. Right?
That's the second reason. I'm just asking. It's simple. What do you mean by the food gets elevated?
You're revealing the kedusha and the godliness within it, and you're extracting the kedusha and it's reuniting with its source.
So anyone who eats food, even if they have no kavanah l'shem shamayim, when they eat, what do they have to do if it's not the bracha? They have to have kavanah. They're doing it l'shem shemayim.
So,
Yes. Now, what if a person did not have kavanah l'shem shemayim? So then there's option B. Option B is if you actually use the energy from eating and you use that in order to serve Hashem, so then once again the food is going to be elevated because at the end of the day, the food turns into energy, and that energy is right now being used in the service of Hashem. But these are two different things.
But that happens automatically. That's not.
It doesn't happen. What do you mean it happens automatically?
The energy that you have is automatic. That you get the energy from the food that you eat. So anything that you do after that is, to. Yeah.
I don't understand what you're saying.
It sounds like he's saying when you eat, you get nutritional value, so that gives you physical energy to do things.
Yeah.
Even if you have no
Conscious.
even if you have no conscious intent of ruchnius, when you get physical nutrition, it gives you energy to do things, whatever those things are.
not a question,
To
that's a
daven,
statement.
to learn. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't do that without the energy that you get from the food.
Well,
that you
that's
eat.
what I said. I said there are two ways to elevate food. Number one, if when you're eating it,
We're
you
talking
have...
physical energy.
what I-
Can I finish?
Finish.
But
Come on, let him say what he has to say.
Okay. Again, there are two ways to be able to elevate something. Number one, if when you're eating the food, you're doing it with intention l'shem shamayim, regardless of what happens afterwards. It doesn't even, you don't need to learn the Torah mitzvahs, learn Torah and do mitzvahs afterwards. The food has been automatically elevated because of that kavanah. It's not, the food isn't in limbo. It's not waiting to see, oh, will that person actually daven or learn? Number two, if you didn't have any such intention, but at the end of the day you actually ended up serving Hashem using that energy, the food also becomes elevated.
okay, that's
Interesting.
that's my point. But it's not with intention. It's automatic.
It's not automatic, it's if you learn Torah or do mitzvahs.
So
Yeah,
if it's
well, that's
neither,
what I'm-
then- so if
That's
it's
what I'm saying.
neither,
That you're
if
using
you
the energy.
use
to
physical
do-
energy for other things, not Torah and mitzvahs, then the energy doesn't go anywhere.
Correct.
Okay.
Very interesting. So the first way, you just have the attention, the avana to serve Hashem, but whatever happens after you ingest the food, whether you serve Hashem or not, it doesn't matter. As long as you had the avana. The second way, you have to be use the food to serve Hashem.
So the first way is the ideal way.
Yeah.
Why is the first way the ideal way? What is it? When you're elevating food on a very simple level, you elevate something to a level which is higher than where it is right now. The food that you're eating is klipas noiga. Something which is kosher is klipas noiga. Your nefesh habahamis is also klipas noiga. So if you're eating the food with a nefesh habahamis intention, what is a nefesh habahamis intention? I'm eating it because I'm hungry. I'm eating it because I want to eat it.
You have a taiva
Let me
for it.
finish. I can't get a sentence out tonight.
No, you can't. Got to give him a chance to talk.
Okay, so let me start over again. Okay? So, once again, let's begin. The food is klipas nega. You want to elevate the food, but if you're eating the food and with an intention of the nefesh habahamis, in other words, you are right now channeling your nefesh habahamis. You're being your nefesh habahamis. Your identity is that your nefesh habahamis. What is nefesh habahamis? Self-centeredness. There's nothing. It's not bad in nefesh habahamis.
Sleep is not.
But it's not. But it's not godly either. It's just. It's out for itself. So then, the food is nefesh habahamis. You who are eating it. The food is klipas nega. You who are eating it is klipas nega. You didn't elevate the food. You didn't impact it. You didn't do anything to the food.
It's part.
Now, Dr. Rebbe actually explains later on in Perek Zayin, earlier on in Tanya and Perek Zayin, that if you ate the food as a zoilel of a soiva, in other words, if you fressed away and ate like a behema, then actually you're doing worse. Then you're dragging the food down to even lower level of klippa than where it was in the first place. But if you're not eating, you're not fressing away, you're not eating like a behema, you're eating like a normal human being, like a mensch. But it's not about Hashem, it's about yourself. So then it's klippas noiga. So you didn't elevate the food. But what if I'm not a nefesh habahamis, I'm a nefesh elokis, meaning I'm sitting down eating. Why? Because to serve Hashem. Because That's what I do. I serve Hashem. I'm here to serve Hashem. So therefore, I'm serving Hashem. The moment that I eat the food, I'm elevating the food. Because the food is klipas noiga. And who is eating the food is my nefesh alikis, which is a chilek alikami mal mamish, which is godliness. So it's being elevated by virtue of the fact that it's right now becoming subsumed and digested by an entity which is higher than what it is, a holy entity. But what if I take it, and that's why it's the ideal. The ideal is, it doesn't have to wait to elevate until I daven and learn. The very fact that I'm eating it as a holy person, I am holy, the food isn't holy, so when I'm eating it, it becomes elevated. But what if I wasn't the holy person when I ate it? This is the default, not the default, this is the, how do you say, the
Converse.
Second,
right? Option B. What if I ate a taka for, not l'shem shamayim? So then I didn't elevate the food. So then, b'di'evad, there's another way for me to elevate it, which is, if I taka l'poyel go, and I daven, and I learn, or I do mitzvahs with the koyach of that, so that even though that when I ate it, I didn't elevate it, but right now, ultimately, the energy is right now being elevated in the Torah and Tefillah, so that's the way of elevating it then. So these are the two ways of elevating food.
The bracha is a mitzvah, and you're doing, and if you're making a bracha,
What does the bracha have to do?
that satisfies the intention.
but that's still that's the Bahamas.
What is that?
The Bahamas
It
also makes
satisfies
brachas.
the
Elevating the
intention
food.
that you have an intention to thank Hashem for the food.
That's very nice.
So that's a mitzvah. So you're performing a mitzvah, and you're doing that because you're eating. So that's the intention that you need.
Okay. That's a valid opinion.
Okay.
Alter Rebbe obviously has a different opinion on this matter.
By the way, Rabbi, he makes a good point. I don't even think he realizes why. He makes a good point, because how could you possibly be a holy person if you have no intention of doing mitzvah?
There's no question that if you're doing something with Shem Shemaim, you're going to make a bracha. That goes without saying. But does the bracha alone suffice to elevate the food? So we can all have opinions in this matter. But this isn't an area really of opinion. As we discussed before about Kabbalah on different occasions.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Kabbalah is about fact.
Yeah.
And the facts are not something, since we can't go to a laboratory and test it and say, okay, here, I'm going to make a bracha and let's see if it gets elevated. Oh, now I'm going to eat the food and I'm not going to make the bracha. Let's attach all the monitors to it and let's see, is it getting elevated or not? Okay? That laboratory has not yet been created. So therefore we have to rely on the people who know what's going on. And how do they know what's going on? Because they received it from above. And Alter Rebbe discusses this in Tanya in several places, this topic. And every time I teach, someone raises their hand and asks about the bracha, and I say, I hear that you're saying, but at the end of the day, the Alter Rebbe, he doesn't talk about a bracha, which obviously means to say that that's not enough, that does not suffice to elevate the food.
Elevate a little bit, but not.
But he talks about doing a mitzvah, and making the bracha is a mitzvah.
No, he talks about doing a mitzvah with the energy you got from the food. That's what elevates it.
Learning afterwards.
Okay, so benching afterwards would satisfy that then.
If you benched afterwards with the koyach you got, that will satisfy you.
Yes, that's the koach.
Okay.
You automatically get the koach from the food that you ate. So
In Hasidus, if a Rebbe looks at the food, he elevates it. No bracha doesn't eat or anything. But it has nothing to do with bracha.
Wow. Makes a
Because
good
the
point.
kavanah is Shemayim, like the Titans do. You don't have to eat, you don't have to make a bracha. You don't have to eat. The Rebbe looks at the food and has already an
but he
elevation.
does have the kavanah when he's doing that.
Right, a kavanah, but I'm saying you don't need, he doesn't make a bracha. He's not even eating. He's just looking at it.
That's interesting because
You can elevate the
I've been
food by
to
looking at
Shabbos
it?
Studas
Yes or no?
where
Only heavens.
the kubbel was the balabas, and he had a whole bunch of fruit on the table. It wasn't eaten just to look at and appreciate the various fruits that are available.
And if he looks at me, and the Rebbe looks at me, he elevates me too.
You have no hope.
Yeah. no.
So, Rabbi, to recap, if a holy person eats food, he is holy, so he transfers the holiness onto the food.
Not each transfers the holiness. The food becomes part of you and you're holy, so the food becomes
part of
holy.
him.
Yeah.
And therefore, because it becomes part of that person
automatic.
who is holy, automatically it becomes holy.
By way of example, like when an animal eats grass, so the animal is higher than the grass. The animal is a chai and the grass is a tzemech.
Okay,
When the animal eats the grass, so now the tzemech becomes part of the chai.
Oh, Interesting.
Okay, it's the same idea over here. When we eat something, when you're a higher life form, whatever you now the problem is whatever you eat becomes part of you, becomes part of the higher life form. The problem is usually when we're eating food, we're not a higher life form. We're a behema and it's a behema. We're a behema meaning nefesh bahamis, and it's a behema. So is it a slightly higher life form? Yeah. In other words, then they were a human behema and that's a behema. But neither one of them is godly. We're not elevating to godliness. If you're a nefesh elokis when you're eating it, then it becomes elevated.
But we are a higher creation. We're a medaber, and the behemoth is a chaya.
True.
It's chaya, or you're eating tzomeach.
He said that.
I said it's a slightly higher life form.
So then that in itself.
It doesn't make
so-
you godly.
Doesn't elevate it to lakos. Doesn't elevate it to kedusha. Doesn't elevate it to kedusha.
Just because you're a godly doesn't mean you're godly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you said a behemoth would elevate the grass.
Okay, so you're elevating it to the level of medaber. Okay, but that's not the elevation that we're talking about. That's not what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to accomplish is to elevate things to kedusha.
Okay.
Further insight.
Okay.
4 lines in the bottom.
Yes, sir.
This is all talking about during the weekday. But on Shabbos, yesh aliyah leklipas noiga ba'atzmam. On Shabbos, klipas noiga itself becomes elevated. The outer elements of all the worlds become elevated on Shabbos. On Shabbos, we experience what's called an aliyah sa'ilmas. All the worlds are higher on Shabbos. Therefore, mitzvah lechel. So therefore, on Shabbos, the klipa itself also. During the week, we need to elevate the klipas noiga. On Shabbos, we need to elevate it. The whole world is elevated on Shabbos. L'chein mitzvah lechel kol tanugim b'Shabbos. Therefore, on Shabbos, it's a mitzvah to partake of all different types of delicacies. L'har beis bebasar v'yayin, to eat a lot of meat and a lot of wine. Af shebechoyel nikra zelul v'seva. Even though doing the same thing during the weekday, you'd be considered a fresser, which is very interesting. And during the weekday, if you eat it in that way, it's not only you're not elevating it. A zelul v'seva during the week, you're actually dragging the food down to gimel klipas hatmeis. Now there's 3 options.
Even though you made a bracha.
Even though you make a bracha, yeah. There are 3 options, as we know, right? The option, as we're saying, option number 1, ideal, you want to elevate it to kedusha. Option number 2 is you didn't elevate it to kedusha because you didn't eat it l'shem shamayim, or you didn't do a mitzvah afterwards. Option number 3, if you eat like a behema, you drag it down. If you eat it mamish like a fresser. On Shabbos, if you eat like a fresser, it's a mitzvah. Why is that? Because on Shabbos, the whole klipas noiga has an aliyah. There's aliyah sa'ilamus, and therefore on Shabbos everything is fine.
Offset because it doesn't go up and down and then become an offset because you ate like a fresser on Shabbos.
It doesn't what?
It doesn't offset that it goes up and it
that's what
goes down.
He says,
and then you're left hanging.
Again, l'chein therefore mitzvah lechel kol tanugim b'Shabbos. It's a mitzvah to eat all these delicacies on Shabbos. L'har beis bebasar v'yayin, to eat a lot of meat and a lot of wine. Even though this exact same behavior, which on Shabbos is a mitzvah, if you do it during the weekday, you're called a zelul v'seva. This is all, till now we're talking about something which is permitted. And what it means permitted, it's mutter, that means that we are able to elevate it. As opposed to a isser is the opposite. Isser is something which is tied down, it cannot go up. Not during the day and not during the night. Sorry. Not during the week and not during Shabbos. Even if you daven and you learn with the energy, unless the only way that treifa food can be elevated is if you're eating it lepikuach nefesh, she'etiru razal, which Chazal then we're matir, venasa heter gomor, and it becomes completely mutter. So, there are a bunch of different things. We have food which is mutter, which means it could be elevated, and on Shabbos it is elevated, but it doesn't necessarily have to be elevated. And then there's food which is asr, which can't be elevated unless you're eating it for b'koach nefesh. Why is all this relevant to our conversation over here? There is, we mentioned, we're talking to this, the larger conversation over here is about Eitz Hadas versus Eitz HaChaim. That's what we're talking about the last 2 weeks. And as we mentioned, Eitz HaChaim is the tree of life. What is life? Life is Kedusha, life is holiness. Va'atem hadveikim b'Hashem alekeichem, Chaim v'chum hamayim. Chaim, life, is associated with Hashem, because without Hashem, everything's dead. Hashem is the source of life. Ki imcha mikra chayim, right? Hashem is the source of all life. And the only thing that is considered alive is something which is attached and connected to Hashem. That's why Klippa is always known as Makim Hamisa, the place of death. So Eitz HaChaim is pure goodness. Eitz Hadas, as his name suggests, is Eitz Hadas Toiv V'Ra. What does Das mean? We know Das is something we learned in Tanya. Das is connection, Das is intimacy. So Das Toiv V'Ra means that it's intimately connected with both good and with evil. So it's a mixture. And that's really what happened with the Chat Eitz Hadas, is that everything in this world suddenly became a mixture of good and evil. Nothing in this world is purely good, nothing in this world is purely evil, everything is a mixture of the two. And that's what Isser V'Heter is all about. The whole thing of Isser V'Heter is how are we dealing with this object? This object has in it both good and evil. And our job, therefore, is to extract the good from the evil. Everything in this world is from Eitz Hadas, and that's what Isser V'Heter is. Isser V'Heter is really the Eitz Hadas. And we have it in every single direction, which is very interesting. So, the fact, when we say something is Asr, what does Asr mean? Asr means it is in the hands of, tie down in Klippa, right? It's connected to Klippa, so Eitz Hadas, that's the Ra. Something which is Mutter, what does Mutter mean? That it could be elevated from Klippa, which means that it is connected to Klippa. Even Mutter, the very name indicates its connection to Klippa.
So
When you say something is freed, it's freed from what? That means it was in captivity. It means it was connected, and we're freeing it. So even when something is mutter, also the very name mutter implies a connection to Eitz Hadas. Yeah.
So take tefillin, which is obviously a mitzvah. Before someone puts tefillin on the object.
Yeah, it's a little. It's a better idea to finish the flow, and then we'll ask questions. It's a good thing to institute, even though you are following common practice over here by doing so. But it's not. Maybe we should change. Maybe we should change common practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Big phrase. That's a big phrase.
Take the thought.
So it's Eitz Hadas. We'll go back to Eitz Hadas.
And then he says something interesting. He says, how about something which is forbidden? Something forbidden can't be elevated. Not Shabbos, not during the weekday. So what might you think? You might think that this isn't Eitz Hadas Toiv V'Ra. This is just Ra. Says the Alter Rebbe, no. What's the proof? He says, if you eat L'Pekuach Nefesh, you look in two lines from the top, Kupam Dal, Jehitiru Razal. There are sages permitted.
It's a heter gomer.
What do those words add? V'nasa heter gomer. It should say, Im Lo Sha'achal L'Pekuach Nefesh Jehitiru Razal. What's he adding?
What's
V'nasa heter gomer? Why do you have to add those words?
You're changing.
And also, he doesn't say V'nasa muter. He says V'nasa heter, which is very interesting. Because when you say She'etiru Chazal means Chazal say, you can eat it. It's evil, it's bad. But because Pekuach Nefesh, you could eat it anyways. V'nasa heter means something else. Nasa heter doesn't mean Chazal say you can eat it. Using the language, the Yeshivish language. Is this about the Gavra or is it about the Chefetz over here? Hitiru Razal is the Gavra. Chazal say that if the person who's in a situation of Pekuach Nefesh, that person can go and eat it. V'nasa heter, that's the Chefetz. 1 second. Heter means that actually, when it becomes mutter, it becomes a heter. That means that a person's eating Pekuach Nefesh is elevating it, because that's what the word heter means. The word heter means that you're elevating it. Think about that for a second. And by the way, taka halacha, someone who's eating something treif for Pekuach Nefesh reasons, talking about makes a bracha. Forget about making a mitzvah. Also makes a bracha before and after. There, it's a halacha, because it's not only mutter, it's heter. Not only it's mutter, it's heter.
You make a bracha?
Now the question is it heter or is it heter? Question is it heter or is it heter gomer? So that already, if you notice that the Alter Rebbe adds the word gomer here, but it's in
brackets.
It's in brackets. It's almost like and in some periods of Tanya it doesn't appear. The Rebbe has a little problem with the word gomer, because he says the halacha is that if a woman
Giving
Giving birth?
that if a woman has, for koch nefesh reasons, has to eat something which is treif, so she has to eat it, it's a mitzvah. But she's not supposed to then nurse her child until it passes through her system. It's Allah. So what does that tell you? It's not heter gomer, right? That's not gomer, right? There's still some. In fact, it's brought on that Acher Elisha ben Avuya, one of the reasons brought on why he became the way he became was because his mother ate something which was aser, but it was because of koch nefesh. So we see that even after the Torah says it's a mitzvah, and even after it becomes heter, there's still some sort of impact or effect. But let's not get lost in that detail. The larger idea over here is what we're seeing here, that even something which is aser, a piece of chazer, it also has good in it. What's the proof that it has good in it? That in the instance of pikuach nefesh, not it becomes mutter, it becomes heter. Heter means
Changes the hefzer.
it's heter, right? And it can be elevated. And that's why the whole talk, the whole discussion, this is what I'm saying over here. The Zohar doesn't say that Toiras Isser v'Heter is Eitz Hadas. That's what we were led into thinking by the whole, we read the Rai Mehemna, and then all the questions were that if you're learning Shulchan Aruch, you're learning Masechtas Baba Kama, right? So that Torah is Eitz Hadas, not Eitz Chaim. No. It's not what he's saying. He doesn't say that. He says the topic of that, what you're learning, what are you learning about? You're learning about what's mutter, what's also. So what you're learning about is Eitz Hadas, because whenever you're learning about Isser v'Heter, what you're learning about is an object which right now is under the dominion of Eitz Hadas. It has in it good and it has in it bad. And the Torah is telling you how to extract the good from the bad. Or in some cases, it tells you can't extract the good from the bad. The Eitz Hadas is not the Torah's Isser v'Heter, but the actual Isser v'Heter itself. And before I take questions, just one more point over here. This idea that everything in this world Eitz Hadas, and therefore everything's a mixture of good and evil, is not only when it comes to Averis. It's actually even, I think you started talking about tefillin. Mitzvahs also. That is the condition of the world. It's kind of funny. We live in a world which is dominated by Eitz Hadas Tevera. And we like to look at things as black and white. The human tendency, is it good, is it bad? Right? We like to put things in boxes. And really the ultimate lesson of the Eitz Hadas is that throw out your boxes. Because everything is Eitz Hadas Tevera. Everything in this world. A person does a mitzvah. It looks like it's an amazing thing. There's probably some yeshus involved in it also. Probably some guy involved in it also. There's that also. Finding a perfection of good in this world is almost impossible unless a person's a tzaddik. And if a person's a tzaddik, he's not in this world. Why are you looking at me like that?
A tzaddik is not in this world?
He's not of this world, correct?
Oh, he's not of this world.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something that's, so I misspoke. Something that's of this world, by definition, is going to be Tevera.
Okay.
Like Moshe Rabbeinu, right? Moshe Rabbeinu, what does it say? Why is he called Moshe? My Mishasi, he didn't belong here. He belonged in the water. The water was a reference to the higher hidden worlds. He was pulled out, plunked here in this world, but he wasn't of this world. He doesn't. But when he's of this world, it's everything in Torah which deals with the worldly things and what you're allowed and what you're not allowed, what's possible and what's kosher. All of these is the Torah as it's addressing the Eitz Hadas reality. Not the Torah's Eitz Hadas, but all the halach is Tumah v'Tare, Isser v'Heter, Pasul Kosher, all these things, all of them, they're addressing the Eitz Hadas reality. That's what he's trying to say, and that's why we have this whole conversation, and to show how it's actually in the words, Asr and Mutter. Asr means connection to Klippa. Mutter also means connection to Klippa. Because it's freed from, in other words, what does the Mutter mean? That it could be freed from Klippa, which means that in its native state, it's connected to
And you
Klippa.
still have Klippa, though, right? You didn't change the Klippa to something else.
That's an interesting thing. What we're doing is actually is Boider.
You didn't change nothing.
We're doing is Boider. That's which is very interesting.
You
Which is
don't bury,
why
that's right. You're just
Boider-
extracting it.
That's why Shabbos Boider is Asr.
Favos.
For us. Actually, you already have the answer.
You see burrow over here, you're elevating
Because
it.
Boider is a weekday activity.
Oh,
Yeah.
weekday activity, yeah.
Think about it for a second. The whole idea of Boider is that there's the holy sparks and you're removing it from the Klippa. On Shabbos, the whole Klippa Slega, everything has an aliyah. So there's no Boider on Shabbos.
But you're
So-
taking the good from the bad. not
Sorry?
the bad From the good.
You mean
I'm trying.
holy?
It's not really the Av, but
Oh, right. You're asking a very good question. You're saying that what's also in Shabbos is taking the bad from the good, but if the Beder is the Ruchni is the other way, why is that? That's a good question. If you remind me after class, I'll look into it, because that's a very good question. But this is brought down, what I'm saying, it's not my own chiddush, is that the idea of Beder is our whole work during the week is separating and disencumbering and pulling out the sparks. And on Shabbos, we stop. And that's why on Shabbos, we don't do Beder. Anyways, Alan, sorry.
You discussed it about the tefillin.
There we go.
It's any Dvar mitzvah, like a Sefer Torah or whatever.
That's another advantage of waiting till end to ask a question. I think that at least 50% of the time,
It's answered.
the question gets answered, yeah.
More.
Sorry, more you think.
So what's the answer? I don't understand.
What's the question?
What's bothering you?
You're taking the straps of the tefillin and you're elevating them to do a mitzvah. Is that what you were
Well,
talking
the
about?
way you said it is that the bare object you could use for good or for bad. It's up to you.
Or neutral.
Or neutral. It could be the nefesh bahavas that you get the most fancy tefillin to show off, or you get a pair of tefillin because that's what the Torah commands. It's up to you.
Hit a mitzvah.
That's about you. The object itself, just like food, when you eat it, L'Shem Shemaim, you elevate it. When you take a tefillin and you actually use it, so you're elevating it. Now you're the Teverah. If you're putting it on, walking around Shalom, making sure everyone
So the
notices
object itself is open to, depending who encounters it, the same object, the same tefillin.
same
different
leather, the same animal hide.
Yeah, different people will encounter it and will have different encounters. One nefesh elokis, one nefesh bahamis, one total gaiva, and
Right.
what have you.
And one person will make shoes out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's also a
elevating the
mitzvah.
money
By
as
you
well.
clothing somebody, that's
that's true.
a mitzvah.
It could be a mitzvah. Could be a mitzvah, yeah.
So you're elevating the
Also,
money as
trade
well.
fathers are good.
Is the money that you took to buy the tefillin, or the money that you took to buy food to eat where you make a bracha.
So this is a Perek Lamed Zayin in Tanya. I'll have a lengthy Perek. I'll have explain how when you're doing a mitzvah, the concentric circles of elevation. It starts with the object of the mitzvah and yourself, and then it extends to food and drink, and then it extends to the resources. That's in Lamed Zayin. The Rebbe talks about the barichas.
Basar trei fabas at there.
Sorry,
Kelov tashchulim.
right?
So that's a mitzvah doraisa to take a treif meat and give it and throw it to a dog.
I don't believe it's mitzvah deraisa, but that's not really relevant to our conversation. Probably, it's not. It's not in the minyan hamitzvahs, but
It's not in the minyan of
For the
mitzvah.
argument's sake, let's say it was. It's not, but let's say it was.
So you're elevating the treif meat by giving it to the dog because
And
that's
what's your question?
That's what the Torah is
But that's
telling
not-
you to
it's
do.
not-
And what's your question?
Huh?
It's no pikuach nefesh, there's no refuah.
No, but it's
What's
but
your
it's
question?
doing
The animals will
it's
have to
doing
eat
the
it.
mitzvah. You're
What's your
elevating
question?
So what
you're
you're not
elevating
elevating-
the treif meat by throwing it to the dog. You know?
You keep on making statements. I'm asking you what your question is.
Do you have a question?
No, I don't know.
Rabbi,
There's a question hidden there. I'm just trying to pull it out. Which is that it's apparent. Forget about that example that you gave me, but it's apparent that you can elevate even something which isn't kosher, and that is true. And I'll give you another example. So let's say you have a bunch of bachrim.
Bunch of what?
A bunch of bachrim would say, sat and learned for 4 hours, and then they decide that they're going to go and play a football game to gather their strength and to relax their mind to be able to go back. So they take out their football, which is made out of pigskin, and they're busy throwing around the football. Are they elevating the football? Because this football right now is being used l'shem shamayim.
I would think yes.
So that's similar to what you were saying.
Yes.
And how about if you're going to, I don't know where you live, and I don't know how you get here every single day, but what if you rode your donkey to class? Are you elevating your donkey when you ride your donkey to class, to go to come to Tanya class?
Yes.
that's a good example. But Rabbi, you said before something that
So what is the answer?
1 second. A woman pregnant
What?
that she
I
had
didn't say
to-
anything about a
Ask the
pregnant
donkey.
woman. I mean, about Acher, I said, okay, yeah.
Yeah, he said not about Elisha. Before that, he said if she ate something
Nursing woman.
and nursing, she have to wait till some time till what she ate will be consumed.
He said that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Question is, why the child have to suffer on that moment? She has to wait 2 months, for example.
No,
Why
not too much,
does
a
it-
few hours.
Not
Two
too
It
much.
goes
2
through the
hours.
system. A few hours till it goes out of the system.
6 hours.
I don't know exactly, whatever. It's not, we're not talking
Okay,
months.
okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. Hey, you wanted to say something?
No.
No, you did.
Me?
Oh, no, someone interrupted someone, and someone said 1 minute. I forgot who it was. Okay.
What was the answer with the donkey?
Oh.
Are you elevating it? You poses a question. Does it work the same way like when a chayla has to eat something treif?
Remind me of a story. There's once a person who went to get the shidduch for his daughter. He was a big Talmud Chacham himself and a wealthy person. He wanted to get the top bacher. So he goes to yeshiva, hundreds of bachrim there. Everyone is like, get to marry this guy's daughter. I'm set for life. But he's not easy. He says, okay, I have a question. Anyone who's answered this question on the Gemara that I have gets my daughter.
What?
Gets my daughter. Not very PC to say that today, but yeah. So he gets up in the bima and he says his question. And the Bachar and the big Yilim come and everyone's trying to answer the question. And one by one he shoots down the... No one is able to answer. No. He's walking out. As he leaves the door, Bachar runs after him and says, maybe, what taka is the answer? He says, okay, you come with me.
Here's the Ilu. You want to know the answer.
Yeah. What taka is the answer?
You left us.
I don't know if that story ever happened or not, but it's a good story. It's a good story. It brings out a certain... There's a bigger value in wanting to know the answer than knowing the answer in a way.
Knowing the answer.
Knowing the answer. The Rebbe spoke about this once. There was a few Farbringans, one after another. The Rebbe was talking a lot of this, going through the entire topic of Isser Gavri, Isser Chavsa, the Reisa, the Rabbanon, Gimel Kum Set Meis. The Rebbe spoke about this, and it's not, the Rebbe didn't edit the talk afterwards, and it was said on Shabbos. So the transcription, we don't know exactly. But the Rebbe apparently was saying over there that even Gimel Kum Set Meis, unless something is Asr Bahana, actually could be elevated. It's tied down in the form of eating. But if it's not in the form of eating, it could be elevated. Again, as opposed to, let's say, Chametz on Pesach, or Basar B'cholov, right?
Yeah.
It's something with Sanat Hana. The fact that the Torah allows you to have Hana means that by having Hana from it, you can elevate it if Hana is in the right way. Which is a very, very big Kiddush. But that really addresses what you were saying. Okay. Let's continue inside. Aval, however, page Kuf Mandala, we're holding 3 lines from the top. Sorry? Aval, however, Halimud b'Torah, learning Torah. Af, Hilchas Iser v'Heter, even if you're learning the halachas of Iser v'Heter, Tumah v'Tara. Shehem, what are we talking about? HaMishnayis, U'Braisis, Shabbat Gemara. Someone who learns the Mishnah, the Braisis, and the Gemara, U'Poiskim, and the Poiskim HaMevarim, Divreim, Halacha L'Maisa. The Poskim who, work through and explain what the halacha is, bottom line. Hein gufei Torah Shebal Peh. This is the body of Torah Shebal Peh. Shehi Sfiras Malchus Datzilus. And Torah Shebal Peh is Malchus Datzilus. The Isa Bezeir HaKodesh B'Mekoimes Ein Mispar. As we find innumerable times mentioned in the Zohar. U'Bereish Tikunim, and we find it also in the beginning of Tikkun Zohar, in the Pasuk Eliyah. What does it say over there? It says with a chesed, yamina, right, talking about Hashem. Chesed is Hashem's right hand, gvura is smala. Gvura is Hashem's right hand, left hand, right? The fer is gufa, the fer is the body. And then what is the mouth? What does it say over there? Malchus is peh. Malchus is the mouth. What does it mean? That Hashem's Malchus is, and it says Malchus peh, Torah Shebal Peh. That's what it says over there. The Torah Shebal Peh is Hashem's mouth. That's Hashem's communication to us, which is Malchus of Atzilus. That's what it says there. Malchus Peh, Torah Shebal Peh, Karina Amle. So Torah Shebal Peh is Malchus Datzilus. So when you're learning a halacha, you're learning a Gemara, you're learning a Mishnah, Braisa, a Shulchan Aruch, a Ketzas, whatever it may be. But you're right. This is Malchus of Atzilus. Ubatzilus. And those of you who were here with us when we learned Simon Chaf in Iggeres HaKodesh, you remember this? Iyu v'gar mo'ichad bohin. Reuben, remember? What is Iyu v'gar mo'ichad? Hashem, and even the Kalim of Atzilus is all one. The Hainu, meaning She'oirein Tzayif Baruch Hu Misyachid Ba'atzilus the Tachlis HaYichud. The Eir Ein Sof is absolutely 100% and completely one with Atzilus. Shehu Uritzonei v'chochmasei hamlubashim b'diburei Hashem, He Himself, and His will, and His wisdom, all of which are expressed in Hashem's Dibur, Shenikra Malchus, Hashem's Dibur is Malchus, HaKodesh Echad, all is one. So Torah Shebal Peh is Malchus Datzilus, which is absolutely 100% one with Hashem Himself. Who, as we say, Hu v'chachmasei echad, you're learning Torah, Chas v'sholem, to say that Torah is Eitz Hadas. Torah is Eitz HaChaim. Torah is Eitz HaChaim. There's no bra in Torah in any which way, shape, or form. Torah, we know, Ana, Nafshi, Ksavis, Yohavis, right? What do we have this week's parsha? Ve'yichhu li Truma. So the Zohar says on this, that Truma is the word of Truma is Torah Mem, the Torah which is given to us in 40 days. And the Shaila is, it should really say, the Pasuk says, it should say Ve'yitnu li Truma. What is Ve'yichhu li Truma? They should give me a donation. What is Ve'yichhu li Truma? They should take from me a Truma. So the Zohar says that Ve'yichhu li, that how do you take me? It's through Truma, through Torah. That we learn Torah, Torah is Hashem. Literally, Hu v'chachmasei echad. Why? Because Torah Shebal Peh is Malchus Datzilus, and Malchus Datzilus is Iyu v'chayoy echad, Iyu v'chamoy echad. Malchus Datzilus is 100% one with Hashem. So Torah is Eitz HaChaim.
So Torah doesn't have Tov and Ra.
There is no Ra in Torah.
Even if you now, what about if
Period.
after the whole Yisod we said a few not long ago, if someone learns Torah because they're a Balgaiva for kavod or something that doesn't that's not
Then the Torah is in Golos and Klippa. But not that there's something wrong with the Torah. You are taking the Torah and putting it into Klippa.
but
Not that the Torah has any Ra in it.
But the Sefer Torah and the Tefillin, on the other hand, we're going to say, on the other hand, they could have Tov and Ra in it, based on who encounters it,
The person can have Torah Ra.
even by the Torah.
Sefer Torah is holy. What's the Ra in a Sefer Torah? And by the way, there's also this concept of right, Halei Koi Devaraynu Ke'eshnu Hashem Torah is not Mekabel Tuma. So what do we have over here? We have over here Eitz Hadas is the reality of our world. Because in the reality of our world, everything is mixed good and bad. And our avodah in this world is to disencumber. It's to boiders, right? It's to separate. That's the Eitz Hadas, because our world, everything is Torah, everything is good and evil. Torah, even the Torah. Again, that's between Isser v'Heter and Torah Isser v'Heter. Isser v'Heter is that which is permitted and that which is right. This cup is Heter, which means that it's from the Eitz Hadas Torah. Torah Isser v'Heter, the Torah that tells me about this cup, the Torah that's Malchus Datzilus, that's Torah Shebal Peh. That's one with the Eibishter himself. That's it. That's for sure Eitz HaChaim. So what's this whole thing in the Zohar telling us about that when Mashiach comes, we're only going to be learning Kabbalah? Because it's obvious from the Zohar that there is some sort of association of the Torah, of learning Mishnah and Gemara with Eitz Hadas. Because that's what it says when Mashiach comes, we're not learning anymore. But now the Alter Rebbe is saying no. That every single part of Torah, every single word of Torah is Eitz Chaim, Hil Machzikim Baz Eitz Chaim, and is one with the Eibishter. So we still have a ways to go in understanding what's going on over here. Sorry?
No kidding.
But it's a good start.
He's redefined.
In other words, when we started speaking a few weeks ago, you were aghast, right? You were shocked by what the Zohar is saying. Suddenly we're seeing, and this is why we have to be so careful when you're learning Kabbalah, because you can go off by one word, right? Torah is Isser v'Heter versus Isser v'Heter, and you can reach assumptions and conclusions and have all your righteous indignation, and you possibly didn't understand what it's saying.
You did that when you said that there's no tzaddik in the world.
We argued about that in the past, right? But they're not tzaddik in the world.
We just had that now.
Right, so that's why Kabbalah is so important to have a teacher, instructor who knows what they're talking about. Baruch Hashem, we have a good instructor, the Alter Rebbe, who's teaching us this passage of the Zohar. And what we're going to do, so we still have to understand, Taka, what is the Zohar. And furthermore, what we're going to find out is, and we're going to do this mission next week, is that if you look into Kabbalah, Kabbalah Taka differentiates and says that in Torah there are 4 levels. We know that in Torah there is not talking about Pshat Rebbe's Drusheit. Kabbalah, that's something else, and obviously it's also associated. But Kabbalah says like this. This we learned about it in the first part of Tanya. Mikra Chumash is in the world of Asiyah. Rings a bell for anyone. Mishnayis is in the world of Yitzirah. Gemara is in the world of Bria. And Kabbalah, of course, is the highest, because that's what Kabbalah says. So Kabbalah is in the world of Atzilus, right? Remember, Sheldon, last time you were saying also Kabbalah is busy.
So that's three. What's the fourth one?
Mikra, Mishnah, Gemara, Kabbalah. Mikra is in Asiyah. Mishnah is in Yitzirah. Gemara is in Bria. And Kabbalah is in Atzilus. So first of all, we have to understand what that means. Basically, what it's saying over here is that the lowest level is Mikra, is Chumash. Which is kind of, and then the level above that is Mishnah. Above the level above that is Gemara. Now think about that for a second. What is the Mishnah based on? The Chumash. What is the Gemara based on? The Mishnah. So how is it possible to say that the Chumash is lower than the Mishnah? How is it possible that the Mishnah is lower than the Gemara? But the bigger issue here is, we just said that Torah Shabbat Peh, the entirety of Torah Shabbat Peh, it's Malchus of Atzilus. So if it's Malchus of Atzilus, how are we saying that Mishnah is in Yitzirah and the Gemara is in Bria?
What's Torah Shabbat?
What does that mean?
What's Torah Shabbat?
And Torah, that's even the worst thing, because we said over here that Torah Shabbat, right now we said Torah Shabbat Peh is Malchus. Torah Shabbat is actually Tiferes, which is even higher than Malchus. So on one hand we say that Torah Shabbat is Tiferes of Atzilus, on the other hand we say Torah Masiyah. And this is what we're going to have to work on in Mitzvah Shem next week.